pandemic, serving others is the best. Sa pagtutulungan, patuloy ang ating laban sa buhay. Kaya dapat always healthy. With proper diet, exercise, and MX3 coffee mix to ignite my day.
Hi guys!
Lagi akong focused, active, at extraordinary. Because the most important things in life deserve nothing less. MX3 coffee mix, my choice.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy! With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Unang tama, inlove agad. Ang galing, ang sarap. Nagalagab lang. Sarap ulitin, susulitin ikaw. Ito ang tama.
We have the power to protect Mother Earth, keeping it cleaner and greener, to preserve our one and only home. Powering the good life. Meralco.
Welcome back. More commuters hitting the road with students set to return to classrooms next month. George Cahiles returns to tell us how authorities are gearing up for the full reopening of schools during the transport crisis.
With millions of students expected to return to schools this August, the Transportation Department is looking for ways on how they may help them have a more convenient and safe travel. Libreng sakay on EDSA Busway, LRT Line 2, and the Pasig River Ferry are ensured. What the DOTR is working on now is to have a unified system where students will enjoy 20% discount on other rail lines such as the MRT, LRT Line 1, and PNR. The Education Department is hoping that teachers may also enjoy these benefits.
So gusto lang natin na masigurado at ma-emphasize ng ating gobyerno at maparamdam sa ating mga guro na sila'y binibigyan ng kahalagahan ng ating gobyerno.
Sa busway, libre na sila, no? But pag-aaralan natin yung other mode of transport, no?
The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board plans to reinstate around 30% of old bus routes that passes through the University Belt in Manila. LTFRB Chairperson Cheloy Garafil says this is to ensure that there will be a sufficient number of public transport in anticipation of higher demand.
Nung pandemic, 'di ba, for health and safety protocols, maraming nakat na lines. So ngayon, since bumabalik na tayo, magpa-face-to-face classes, we're studying and that's what we hope to return once we go back to school in August or September.
Sapat naman siya. It's just that we need to ensure na lahat ng may permit ay tatakbo at biyahe. That is what is crucial.
The Transportation Department also plans to extend by 2 years school service vehicles that already reached the 15-year maximum limit. With more vehicles that will be on the road with the resumption of the in-person classes, the transport sector is also anticipating heavy traffic situation.
We will coordinate with MMDA, no?
Secretary Bautista says most of the recommendations may be studied and approved by the department and its attached agencies. As for the libreng sakay, the decision will be coming from Malacanang. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Prices of school supplies are expected to rise ahead of the reopening of classes. In this report, AC Nicole spoke to some vendors in Manila's Bargain Place, Divisoria.
Classes in public elementary and high schools will not open until next month. Those school supplies vendors are hoping sales will soon pick up. A school uniform vendor tells us she barely sold any of her items since the pandemic hit. Her earnings are nowhere near enough.
500, 1,000, hindi naman po yun sapat sa kung may tauhang ka pa. Hindi naman po siya sapat.
Norieta Ponce has been selling school supplies in Divisoria for over 6 years. She tells us her buyers are tightening their budget, only buying the most essential items and not stocking up on other things they used to purchase.
Wala pa talaga. Yung lahat ng supply bibilhin. Ngayon, yung kung ano lang talaga yung mga importante, yun muna.
As fuel and basic commodities prices go up, the same goes for certain school supplies. Some of these items include notebooks. A rim with 10 pieces priced at 140 before is now going for 180. A box of crayons, the most basic with 8 colors, used to be sold at 20 pesos only. This time, it's higher by $5.
Lahat nagsisitaasan. Compare na lang siya sa ibang brand. Pag ibang brand yung kinukuhaan mo, minsan mababa, minsan mataas. Yung ibang stall mataas, ganyan. Doon ka sa mas mura kasi para may kita ka rin kahit paano.
While vendors want to keep their prices competitive, they say they have no choice but to impose increases just to make ends meet. If you have money to spare, it would be better to purchase school supplies now. Vendors say prices could continue to go up as school opening nears. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
Shifting gears, the Anti-Communist Task Force is here to stay despite calls to abolish it. The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-ELCAC, met today to discuss plans and the fate of peace talks under the Marcos administration. Amor Santos reports.
The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-ELCAC, does not recommend the revival of national peace talks with communist rebels. It prefers to continue the localized negotiations implemented by the Duterte administration. The NTF-ELCAC's executive committee convened for the first time on Friday, led by its vice chairperson, National Security Advisor Clarita Carlos. They also gave a glimpse of what the public can expect from the task force under the Marcos administration.
Within the more than 50 years na negotiation natin, wala po tayong nakuhang maganda doon sa national peace talks. The dynamic of conflicts is different in different areas.
The local peace talks, the local peace councils are the ones working, so we continue on that level. In regard to the resumption, that is the call of the President of the Republic.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte reached out to the rebels even before assuming office in 2016. Negotiations went on and off until he turned his back on the left a year later, as both sides accused each other of ceasefire violations. The Communist Party of the Philippines previously rejected localized peace talks. It said the government was only fabricating reports on the mass surrenders of rebels. The NTF-ELCAC now recommends offering amnesty to communist rebels, but gave no further details. Meanwhile, the task force says it will not red tag or baselessly associate anyone with the CPP, which the government has designated as a terrorist group. A former spokesperson, Lorraine Badoy, is facing several complaints for red tagging student leaders, teachers, activists, religious leaders, and even former Vice President Leni Robredo. Badoy now claims someone from the NTF-ELCAC is trying to silence her.
Tungkol sa kumausap kay Yusek Badoy, wala po kaming kinalaman doon. Inuulit namin ang red tagging ay hindi po nanggaling sa National Task Force ELCAC. Nabanggit na po namin dito na hindi namin ito tolerate ang red tagging. What we're trying to do is to unmask kung ano talaga yung totoo, kung ano yung mga grupo na ito.
There have been calls to abolish the NTF-ELCAC, but it is clearly here to stay as officials say it can put an end to the decades-old communist insurgency. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
The Communist Party of the Philippines continues to reject localized peace talks, calling them a smokescreen for military abuses. Urban poor groups lay down what they call the real state of the nation more than a week before President Marcos addresses the country. Transport Group Piston and Progressive Group Kadamay led the State of the Urban Poor address today to share the plight of their sectors. The groups highlight the rising prices of fuel and basic goods, the low salaries of workers, and what they call delayed action in addressing economic woes. They call on the president to present a concrete action plan to resolve various issues during his State of the Nation address on July 25th.
Dahil gusto po namin, sa gagawin niya po sa 25, sagutin niya yung lahat ng mga karaingan na inihahapag namin ngayon. Yun nga po, no, yung price control. Gusto namin ang katiyakan sa trabaho at katiyakan sa paninirahan ng sektor ng mga maralita.
Kailangan rin pikisahin niya ang mga probisyon sa matataas na mga buwis sa usapin ng produktong petrolyo. Dahil ito yung sanhi ng patuloy na pagbulusok hindi lamang ng kabuhayan ng mga driver, kundi sa kabuhayan ng ating mga mamamayan.
Piston and Kadamay say they will join the nationwide protests during the much-anticipated SONA. Well, let's backtrack a bit to May 9th. The local and national polls were a boost to the economy, with candidates spending billions of pesos combined to court voters. Find out who were the biggest campaign spenders in this report from Melissa Lopez.
The winning tandem of now President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte mounted the costliest campaigns running up to the May 2022 polls, and they did so without spending a single peso of their personal funds. Together, the Uni-Team tandem declared spending nearly 840 million pesos between February 8 to May 7, the official campaign period. It paid off with landslide victories for both. About half of the amounts came from donations from their political parties. Former Vice President Leni Robredo was a far second in spending at 388 million pesos, most of which were cash donations from supporters and nearly 20,000 pesos out of her pocket. Other high-profile candidates wielded their star power or billionaire status to raise their chances of winning. Boxing champ and Senator Manny Pacquiao footed more than half of his presidential campaign from personal funds at 63 million. Former Senate President Tito Soto shelled out nearly 50 million pesos for his vice presidential run. Opposition Senator Kiko Pangilinan, husband of megastar Sharon Cuneta, took 21 million pesos out of his own pocket for the 2022 campaign on top of 109 million in cash donations. But the biggest campaign spender is first-time Senator Mark Villar. The son of the country's richest man mounted his 132 million peso campaign using his own money. But not all big spenders were victorious. Former Senator Richard Gordon, ex-Defense Secretary Gibot Yedoro, and former Quezon City Mayor Herbert Bautista spent tens of millions but still lost in the Senate race. Comelec's Campaign Finance Office is going through each report and receipt to check if the declared figures are accurate.
Pag makita namin in our audit na nag-overspend siya, ang ginagawa namin, nag-prepare agad kami ng complaint dyan sa Law Department for election offense.
Winners like Senator Alan Peter Cayetano got a 10 million peso windfall from donations, and President Marcos with 1.5 million. What should they do with the extra money?
It's really up to the candidate kasi ang major niyan donation siya eh. Pagka-donation parang ikaw na may-ari nun eh.
Losing bets are still held accountable. Comelec says failure to file a spending report will entail a fine or even a perpetual ban from holding any government post. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
In Sri Lanka, embattled Gotabaya Rajapaksa steps down as president 2 days since he fled the South Asian country. The Speaker of the Parliament has formally accepted Rajapaksa's resignation Friday. The former president fled to the Maldives, then to Singapore for a private visit. Sri Lanka's Prime Minister, also supposed to resign, has been sworn in as acting president. He will hold office for up to 30 days or until the parliament elects a new president. Entertainment stories coming up. The fire burns brighter for BTS ARMYs, with J-Hope dropping the music video for Arson today. We give you a look next. Plus, an update on the growing list of live events in the country. A K-pop group sold out tickets to 2 shows less than 7 hours after selling began. Details when we return.
Dangerous out there. Buti na lang there's locally superfoods with 3 kinds of fruits that are super in many ways. First, there's our dragon fruit drink na mayaman sa prebiotics that aid digestion. Second, there's our passion fruit drink with no added sugar and high in vitamin C. Lastly, we have our mangosteen drink, good for your heart. All superfruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit to help protect your immune system. Superfruit for super you.
Serenity meets adventure. Welcome to the birthplace of Philippine surfing that will surely capture your heart. And thanks to the Skyway Stage 3 and the Tarlac Pangasinan La Union Expressway, a trip to the coastal province of Aurora is now a breeze.
Ang province ng Aurora, it offers historical, cultural, eco, and adventure tourism. Marami kaming kasaysayan na maaaring ikwento, ganun din ang mga magagandang nature-based destinations.
Since nag-boom yung surfing, ngayon meron na kaming 40 surf schools operating in Baler. Ang laking industry na nabuo ng surfing.
Ang klima po dito sa Aurora ay talagang masasabi kong isang biyaya na binigay ng Diyos. Kaya kahit na anong klase ng pagpa-farming, maging goat racing, maging integrated farming o kahit anuman, masasabi namin na talagang pinagpala ang aming lalawigan.
Ang pagkakaiba po ng produkto ng Aurora, specifically Baler, tungkol po sa sabutan ay talaga pong hinabi o nilala ito na may kasamang puso.
Sa ating mga Pinoy, tangkilikin naman po natin yung ating produkto dahil sa tuwing tinatangkilik natin ito ay nakakatulong tayo sa bawat naghahanap buhay.
Endowed with picturesque vacation spots and cultural attractions, Aurora fills all the boxes in your travel bucket list.
Welcome back. Sports news now. A huge demand for NBA player DeAndre Ayton, with the Phoenix Suns reportedly matching a $133 million four-year offer sheet from the Indiana Pacers to acquire the big man. News outlet ESPN says Ayton signed the Pacers' offer, but the Suns responded quickly, meaning Ayton will return to Phoenix and cannot be traded without his consent for a year. And plenty of sports action for Team Philippines today, with Gilas Pilipinas dominating India for the FIBA Asia Cup 101-59 in Indonesia. This bounce-back win after the Philippines lost to Lebanon on Wednesday. This Sunday, Gilas faces New Zealand at 9 p.m. Philippine time. Plus, the Filipinas vie for a place in the finals in tonight's semis against defending champs Vietnam in the AFF Women's Championship. That's happening at the Rizal Memorial Stadium, 8 p.m. Vietnam has not lost in the tournament so far. From the pitch to the pageant stage, Philippine bet Alison Black unveils new photographs to get fans excited for Miss Supranational. Alison sported a regal look in these images she shared ahead of tomorrow's coronation. The beauty queen writes she can't wait to show what she can do as one of the countless inspirational women the country has raised. Tune in to CNN Philippines tomorrow at 12 noon to watch the pageant, and at the same time on Sunday for Mr. Supranational. Good news for Diwanag, or fans of OPM band Ben and Ben. The folk pop group added seats for its send-off concert on Sunday. More tickets for seated sections, leaves, and maybe the night go on sale at 2 p.m. tomorrow, with online queuing beginning today. The show comes right before Ben and Ben embarks on its U.S. and Canada tour. And sing along to Anne-Marie's hit track 2002 live this 2022. The British pop sensation will perform at the New Frontier Theatre in Quezon City on October 16th. Ticket selling opens July 19. Filipino Carrots show their love for 17, selling out passes for the K-pop group's 2 concerts on the first day of release. This despite seats being added to, quote, compensate for technical issues and, quote, get as many carrots to watch. Netizens say over 144,000 users lined up for tickets online. And finally, out of the box is J-Hope of BTS's first solo album. The artist just released Jack in the Box, which features 10 tracks, mainly under the hip-hop and rock genres. The music video for the second single, Arson, also dropped today.
Es done.
J-Hope also trended for his star-studded album launch with K-pop artists like Jungkook and Jessie in attendance. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
DYKB Radio Roda.
Over the past several years, we've made advances in the field of medicine that have changed our lives for the better. For example, robotic surgery is now here with us, and it has made a lot of procedures, for the most part, less invasive, and it's become more common here in the Philippines today. Surgical advances here can even be compared with that of more advanced cities. And the outlook of these cutting-edge technologies is looking even brighter. On the program today, we'll talk more about the state-of-the-art surgeries in the country and developments that may one day be available to all Filipinos. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Healthcare technologies can improve the quality of life for many Filipinos. Our guests are here today to tell us what's in store for surgical care here in the Philippines. With us is Dr. Patrick Tuliao. He's a urologist and robotic surgeon from the Medical City. Also joining us is Dr. Hermogenes Monroy. He's the head of surgery at St. Luke's Medical Center, Global City. For the past 400 years, since modern surgery has been performed, it's been more or less a traditional way. Before we talk about the advances, let's talk about what is deemed traditional or normal, kumbaga. How are surgeries traditionally performed?
It's usually the knife, the open approach. We open the belly and then cut and then suture it and then close the belly again with sutures, with the big incisions.
Dr. Pat, when it comes to surgical procedures, is surgery the initial mode of management for most diseases?
There seems to be an equal amount of surgical cases with medically treated cases. But for the more serious diseases like cancer and stones and prostatic enlargement, we usually do surgery for those.
Most of the ailments that people have, hindi kaagad naman surgery ang option for that. But a lot of times, surgery may be the more practical way to address a disease or a problem. What are some of the drawbacks? You talked about an open incision here, meaning there is a direct line of sight between the surgeon and the problem area. What are some of the drawbacks of this type of procedure?
We have larger incisions, larger wounds, deeper wounds, more post-operative pain, and higher incidence of surgical wound infection. The recovery is quite prolonged or delayed.
But Dr. Pat, let's talk about this traditional way. Nakalimutan na ba natin to, or is this still part of the mainstay of a modern surgeon?
When we train, we usually start doing our surgeries the traditional open way before we learn the more advanced laparoscopic or robotic ways of doing them. I don't think we've forgotten these traditional open approaches, but slowly, because of the evolution of technology and that enable patients to recover faster because of the smaller incisions and less invasive approaches, then a lot of patients are opting what we call as modern approaches to surgery.
Briefly explain, what is laparoscopic surgery?
The other term for it, which is easier to understand, is keyhole surgery. So, for example, I need to take out the kidney. So, in the traditional way, I will make a big incision in the flank of the patient so that I can take out the whole kidney. But if I do it laparoscopically, I will just make 3 small incisions like this. And through those incisions, I can insert my instruments and then do the whole surgery using just the 3 small incisions.
But Dr. Noneng, ano yung main advantage ng laparoscopic medicine if compared to that of the open type?
So, for example, for gallbladder stones, before the standard care is open surgery, making at least 10 centimeter wound in the subcostal area on the right. But now we make very small holes, 5 millimeter, 3 or 4 holes, and then without cutting the muscles, the fascia, and the fat layers. And therefore, patients are able to recover faster, return to work faster, lower incidence of infections. And that's why in some hospitals, particularly in private hospital in St. Louis where I practice, the rate of laparoscopic surgery for gallstones is already at 98 and sometimes 99%. Only 1 to 2% are performed open.
Now, another surgical advancement that's revolutionizing the healthcare industry is robotic surgery. More on this when we return. We're your partner in healthcare. Keep it here on MedTalk Health Talk. Today, we're talking about surgical advancements in the field of medicine that can help empower Filipinos and ultimately improve everyone's lives. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Now, an increasingly popular type of surgery is robotic surgery, and this refers to the use of specialized technology that enhances the capabilities of the surgeon's hands. I'd like to emphasize to the viewers that robotic surgery is a tool. The main star of this procedure is still going to be the surgeon. Controls and manipulation of the robotic machine will be by a human being. With that being said, Dr. Pat, how long has robotic surgery been available here in the Philippines?
I believe it was the first robot was purchased by Medical City. I know that I was still in residency when they purchased that robot, so that would have been around 2011 or 2012.
But Dr. Pat, how long has robotic surgery been available in other parts of the world?
If I'm not mistaken, it's from the US, which was way back in 2006. So they probably did a lot of testing before they published that paper.
It is relatively new, but not that new that the ones operating it are still trying to figure it out. So all the fine-tuning is there, all the skill involved is there. Now, Dr. Noneng, how important is the human element or the human factor here? Bakit hindi pwedeng yung robot na lang ang gagawa ng lahat?
Well, it's not an automated machine that we find in industry or car manufacturing. But so the surgeon is still the most important factor or element in robotic surgery. We totally control all the movements of the robotic hands or instruments.
Now, Dr. Noneng, what are the main advantages which robot can do in a surgical procedure as opposed to minimal invasive like laparoscopic surgery and even open surgery?
It has shorter hospital stay, a lesser post-operative pain, and able to do more complex or more difficult procedures like pelvic rectal surgery, iliac node dissections, and those highly technical or complex procedure because of the different additional features that robot has compared to laparoscopy, like higher definition 3D camera system, articulated or better instrumentations, plus the surgeon is seated in a console, more relaxed, better ergonomics, and the instruments are able to work in very small spaces like the pelvic area or the iliac node area.
Can you use a robot with pretty much all the surgeries using laparoscopy or open type?
Speaking in general, yes, you can use the robot for any of the surgeries that you can do open, except for those that you like, for example, circumcision. I mean, you can still use a robot, but that's unnecessary. But in urology, we generally reserve using the robot for the more complicated procedures, especially those procedures that are done for cancer disease, like prostate cancer and kidney cancer.
Even if the robot can do several procedures, there's a practical reason and where to use that robot. Where does the benefit of robotic surgery come into play when it comes to malignancies or cancer surgeries?
Cancer cases in urology, for example, in prostate cancer, it's very hard to take out the prostate when you're doing open surgery. So when you use a robot, it becomes easier because you have a better visualization, and then the robot can actually do a lot of motions that is practically impossible for the human hand to do.
Is there any reason why a procedure that is currently being done under robotics would need to shift to that of an open type?
You start with a robot or a laparoscopy, but because of technical difficulties, then you convert to open surgery. You go back to open surgery to complete the procedure. But in robot, there is a very low conversion rate compared to laparoscopic approach. And this is true particularly for obese or very heavy patients and male patients with very narrow pelvis, where the conversion rate is usually higher in laparoscopy. So talking of limitations, I think the main limitation of robotics is really the cost. Rather than that, of course, availability and access to a lot of places in the country.
These technologies and much more have improved the way we do surgery. But there's so much more to learn with these advancements in technology. When we return, we'll discuss the outlook of healthcare here in the country. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Explain again, Dr. Pat, what traditional open type, what time frame are we talking about here, usually post-operatively, before the patient can go back to work, go back to their usual way of life?
For example, we have a patient who underwent open radical prostatectomy for prostate cancer. So that patient is expected to stay in the hospital for around 5 to 7 days before he can go home. And then he will wait for the wound to heal, which the wound will be around this big below the umbilicus. So that wound will heal in around 1 month, completely healed. So he can do any activity that he wants to do after a month.
With robotic surgery naman, Dr. Pat, if they opt to do robotic surgery for that same procedure, what kind of downtime are we talking about?
We expect that patient to stay in the hospital for around 3 days, and he can actually return to his regular activities earlier, usually in less than a month. And because the wounds are so small, there's very little discomfort for that patient.
Now, Dr. Noneng, let's talk about the cost of all of these advantages for that matter. Now, how much more expensive is a robotic procedure than that of the traditional way for that matter?
They say that it is 1.3 to 1.5 times more expensive than laparoscopic approach. We're talking about 100 or 200, 300,000 more pesos.
Is insurance coverage the same for robotic surgery as it is with laparoscopic or open type of surgery, Dr. Pat?
Unfortunately, in the Philippines, a lot of insurance will still not cover robotic surgery the way it's covered in other parts of the world. So most insurance companies will still classify robotic surgery as a new type of procedure, even if it's been here since early 2000s. So the coverage is still not there.
For the most part, it is still not covered by insurance. So the access there is something that our country, our government can work on. Now, Dr. Noneng, when it comes to access to healthcare, is robotic surgery a must-have nowadays?
PGH is the first government hospital that has acquired a robotic system, and we were able to do robotic cases, even if the patient is the charity ward or or subsidized by the government. So it's feasible. We have shown it to be feasible to be able to do this to our the poor patients and subsidized by the government.
Which makes me ask the question to Dr. Pat, where do we go from here? Available na ang robotic surgery here in the Philippines, or although in its early stages, but where do you see the trajectory? How can we improve from where we are right now?
We always try to follow the trend, and right now the trend, worldwide trend, is going into robotics. Again, I'm just speaking in terms of urological practice. So I think robotics is still the future when it comes to treating malignancies from the urinary tract. So that's the current trend for robotics. So we should, make robotics more accessible and available to more Filipinos, if that's the rest of the world.
Dr. Pat, given ba na kailangan techie ka to be a robotic surgeon?
You do practically the same things when you do robotic surgery. You just use a different tool. So it's not that difficult to learn how to do robotics. There are a lot of courses that you can take, and you can always call your senior or someone who's more knowledgeable than you to help you out when you do the first few cases. So I think as long as you want to learn it when you do robotic surgery.
With that, thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Tuliao and Dr. Hermogenes Monroy, for being with us today, sharing your expertise and your insights about robotic surgery. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.
Let's get ready to rumble!